And all of a sudden I realized that the way that I was talking to myself about the mount, like just really negatively think about everything wrong with the situation instead of how to make it work. And it was like this weird light bulb moment where all of a sudden I was like, okay, the floor's not perfect. It's a new floor. I'm in a new gym. How can I make that work? So that was kind of like a complete shift in now what my focus was. Even though the mount then wasn't perfect, I started doing it and I started thinking about, oh, okay, well, that one wasn't very good. What if I modify this to then make it work?
I loved today's episode as we sat down with the incredible Emma Nedov, an inspiring gymnast who was at the recent 2024 Paris Olympics. Emma has an incredible journey that is nothing short of extraordinary. It's a story of her determinations, her resilience, and the power of her setting up an extraordinary support team. In our conversation, Emma opens up, she's vulnerable, and she shares the mental and the physical challenges she faced along the way and how she overcome it. I found her journey relatable, I believe can be applied to anyone, whether you're an inspiring athlete, a parent supporting your child's dreams, or just trying to navigate the ups and downs of life. There's something in this episode for everyone. Let's dive in. Welcome, Emma, to the DA Training Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
But what amazes me most is your incredible story. So after a 3.5-year hiatus, you embarked on a journey to get back into the Olympics with only 9 months of training. Was that right? 9 months?
9 months, yep.
And you secured a place for the 2024 Paris Olympics. What made you decide to come back and what was involved?
My goodness, so much was involved in that decision. However, it was a decision I made within the space of a week. When I finished up in 2020, I was very complete with being done. I was very okay with being finished. I was very successful in my career and I was happy to move on. However, I had never quite fulfilled on making the Olympic Games. I'd missed out twice for reasons outside of my control. And so in October 2023, we qualified an Australian team and I conveniently had moved to Melbourne because I'm originally from Sydney, around the corner from a gymnastics centre. And my best friend and business partner said to me that she was going to train for the Olympics and represent New Zealand. So all of these little puzzle pieces came together and I just thought, why not? I had a conversation with my mental performance coach and he said to me, Emma, if you want to do it, we can do it. That was ultimately the reason why. I realized that the possibility was there and so I just went for it.
Took the opportunity. The rest is history. You made the team.
Well, as much as starting training again, I wanted to go to the Olympics. It was very scary. I got scared to tell people that because fear of failure. I was nervous that I might not be able to pull through. We set small goals and by the time I got to nationals, that's when my coach and I were like, oh, hey, actually, this is reality now. We might be able to do it. And that was only 6 months in. So yeah, it was incredible.
That sounds absolutely amazing because you've had so many incredible achievements and milestones in your gymnastics career. You're known as a beam queen.
Yes.
So what was it? 2-time Australian national champion on the balance beam, gold medals at the Australian Classics, and that was even after you came back from an injury, the World Championships representation, now Paris. What has been a career highlight or your proudest moment so far?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I got asked this question actually the other day and generally I would say World Cup in 2019 when I won gold on beam. That was probably a huge moment and one of my proudest moments. However, I was really fortunate as a junior. I got a lot of opportunities to represent Australia internationally. In 2011, I went to the Youth Commonwealth Games and won beam at that competition. And I was young. So 2011, I was 15 and I was in Isle of Man and the prince or the king, can't remember, I have a photo, shakes your hand and it was so special. And so I think that moment was pivotal to me. So I would say before everything else that unfolded as a senior, as a junior, achieving something like that, that was probably the most impactful time in my career.
What an experience. And then you've also overcome significant challenges in your career you've gone from injuries to the Olympic dream. What mental strategies helped you stay resilient?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I think it's something that I accidentally built up because, you do gymnastics when you're so young that you don't necessarily have the time to think about that. I suffered from probably my first big injury was breaking my finger doing a skill on beam in a competition. It was both embarrassing and terrifying at the same time. I continued on in the competition, and there's a video where I slip off the beam. It looks quite dramatic. I land on my head. And then I get back up and I get on the beam. And I must have been, young, like maybe 11 or 12. And what got me back up onto that beam, I'm actually not sure. I just knew that was what I had to do. And I think that sort of resilience that you develop as a kid then grows on to when you're older, right? I put my resilience down to a couple of things. Support, having people back me. I've had incredible family and friends throughout my entire career that have always said to me when things don't go well, it's all going to be okay. And whatever you choose to do, we're going to back you up. And then just wanting it, right? Having that genuine motivation and drive and belief in myself to be able to come back and do it again and just try. I think as gymnasts and any elite athlete, we naturally have that little bit of fear of failure coupled with the courage it takes to just try anyway. So I think it's something that we learn as a kid in gymnastics, which is a huge asset to when you get a little bit older and start facing challenges also outside of gymnastics.
We had Jesse Moore on the podcast as well, and he was also saying you just fall off so many times in training that you just know, okay, I've got to get back up, and you're just conditioned to keep going.
Yeah, one of the most fundamental skills in gymnastics is a kip on bars, right? And so for those that don't know what a kip is, you sort of like swing under the bar, lift your legs up and try and somehow get your shoulders over the bar. It's crazy. And as a young kid, it's one of the first fundamental skills that you learn. The way that you learn it is just by doing it. You do it, and you don't make it. I'm not using the word try because you're not trying it, you're actually doing it, but you're not making it. You're stuffing it up every time. And we used to just do it 30 times, just go. And then all of a sudden one day you do it and you actually make it. You get your shoulders over the bar. And so just from a young age, you learn that by doing things, whether you fail or succeed, that's how you're going to get the success in the long run.
And I don't believe there's anything as fate. It's all a learning lesson to get you to the next point, because you're never going to do anything perfectly the first time.
I agree.
You also mentioned a mental performance coach. What does a mental performance coach do?
Oh, so many things. His name's Dave and he keeps me sane. So in 2019 or 18, after I came back out of a 6-month hiatus, I had my eyes set on 2020 Tokyo Olympics. And I knew that physically I was in brilliant condition. I'd been doing my routines for a very long time now. But I recognised that a weakness within my gymnastics was my performance and my head. I would get in my head a lot. I struggled a little bit with self-confidence and self-doubt when I would get to competitions. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to get a sports psychologist. So initially, Dave started out as my sports psychologist. I call him my mental performance coach because he's so much more to me than just a sports psychologist. And one of the first things we worked on was my language. I used to be so negative. I used to say things like, I can't do this. Just all of us together, we'd all complain all the time. First things he did with me was change my language, bring awareness to it.
What's something that you changed?
Okay, so on a broad area, I'll use an example of recently. I was within the comeback, I was doing my mount on beam, which is a new skill and it's kind of scary. And I went to a different gym and he was there with me with my coach. And I didn't like the surface that I was running on. It was a bit squishier, not what I'm used to. And I said, I don't like this floor surface. It's not good. Like, I'm not going to be able to do my mount onto this. And this is already 6 years of me trying to practice better language. So I'm like standing there, and before I'm even thinking about the mount, I'm thinking about the floor. And I'm thinking about how I don't like it. It's soft. It's going to throw me off. I'm not going to be able to do my mount. Lo and behold, I do my first couple of mounts, fall off. And I'm getting frustrated. I'm getting angry, right? Dave comes over to me and he says, right, how about you stop trying to prove to all of us that the floor sucks? We know that the floor sucks. How about instead of that, you make it work? And all of a sudden I realized that the way that I was talking to myself about the mount, like just really negatively think about everything wrong with the situation instead of how to make it work. And it was like this weird light bulb moment where all of a sudden I was like, okay, the floor's not perfect. It's a new floor. I'm in a new gym. How can I make that work? So that was kind of like a complete shift in now what my focus was. Even though the mount then wasn't perfect, I started doing it and I started thinking about, oh, okay, well, that one wasn't very good. What if I modify this to then make it work? Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. So instead of thinking what was wrong, you thought of how can I improve it? So you would try something else and kept on going.
Yeah, exactly. And so just tiny little, I call them mindset shifts that just have the ability to change where you direct your focus and that intentionality. So a big thing for me was working around intentionality. And then in gymnastics in particular, being able to articulate how you do your skills. For a lot of people in gymnastics, it's a scary sport. And being able to understand how to do skills and articulate that, that's something that I worked with Dave on to be able to get through the fear of gymnastics.
I think we all have mental blocks and times in our life, and language is massive, how we talk to ourselves, what we say. Like the other day I was doing high jump and I was jumping, and while it was lower, they're going, you're jumping at 140, 150 centimetres, you're getting it. I got to 125, I couldn't jump it because you were clearing it, and it was my mind. I was in my head. I was telling myself I couldn't do it. And guess what? I didn't.
It's so true. My biggest recommendation to young athletes or young people, because even when I finished up gymnastics for that 3.5 years, I kept working with Dave and I kept working with him. That's why I call him my mental performance coach now instead of my sports psych, around business. And I give talks to companies and things like that, and I speak about the same things.
What advice do you have for young athletes or anyone struggling with self-doubt or fear of failure in their training?
That was me a lot. I am generally a cautious athlete. I'm not one that just chucks skills. I have to really believe that I can do it. In particular for gymnastics, when you're so young, you have such a close connection with your coach. I found a lot of the time having that trusting relationship with my coach was really important for me to progress. I can honestly say that I would not be sitting here today if it wasn't for the coaches that I had. They were fundamental in my success as an athlete.
Did you ever have a coach that you didn't trust or love, and what did you do?
I've been really lucky to have coaches that I've always trusted, right, and respected. There's definitely been ones like national coaches where our relationship has been different to what my personal coach relationship would be. And I've gone away on trips, for example, without my personal coach, but with the national coach, and that's a different dynamic. But there's never been a distrust there that they're going to put me in a position where I'm unsafe. My biggest piece of advice is to just keep going for things. Keep just doing it. Just keep going. Your goal doesn't always have to be the top of the mountain. I really am a firm believer that there is no top of the mountain. You get to the top of the mountain when you're dead. You want to keep climbing. And so just keep trying. Just keep going for it. It's in that sort of journey that you develop who you are.
How do you set your goals and reset them?
It's a learning process. So for example, Dave, or I have another mentor, Dean. I've got people that sort of help me direct, my coaches in particular as well. Obviously, when you're young, you don't necessarily know what your goal is. I didn't start gymnastics to go to the Olympics, actually. I started it for fun. I wasn't one of those kids that had the dream of going to the Olympics. It wasn't until I got a coach that saw that in me that I realised that that could be a possibility for me. I would say that I used to shy away from that because I used to get really scared of setting the Olympics as a goal just in case I didn't reach it.
What made you scared and not want to set it as a goal?
In case I didn't make it. That was it. I did struggle with self-doubt. I really wasn't sure that I was able to do it.
How did you overcome that?
A lot of work with Dave. And over time, I started proving to myself what I was capable of. I find that having a real appreciation and being proud of your achievements is really important. That was something that I glossed over. I would never take the time to recognise how far I had come or to recognise what I was good at. I was very good at being humble, and sometimes being humble is lovely, but it doesn't help you achieve great success.
As you said, there isn't a top of the mountain. You might say, okay, I want to be a millionaire. You reach $1 million mark. Oh, I want to do 2, and then you get there and it's always going, or, in the gym, I want to lift 10 kilos, you lift 10, I want to get to 15, 20. There's no top. You can always keep going.
Oh yeah, you gotta admire the view where you are. I'm kind of grateful I didn't make it to the Olympics in 2016 because that was my top of the mountain back then. That's the way I viewed it. I would have just absolutely fallen off. I would have gone to the Olympics and then had no idea what to do with my life. And that happens to a lot of athletes. They really struggle post-Olympics because they do view it as the top of the mountain. They don't take that time to look around and to see that there's actually far more. And it's a stepping stone.
So you mentioned you didn't make it in 2016 and that was your top of the mountain. How were you able to find your other top of the mountains?
In 2016, I was 19. I had really thought to myself, I'm done after this. I can only endure gymnastics for so long. At that time, I hated it.
It was before Dave that mentor.
Yeah, it was. That so was. Oh man, I hated it. Like, it was hard. And back then, our training style in comparison to what I do now and the culture change now is fantastic. Back then, it was a struggle and every day was really, really hard. When I was 16, all of my friends started quitting gymnastics and I ended up training by myself for quite a long time. So I didn't have a lot of joy out of gymnastics, and I think that I also brought that on myself as well. I didn't take the time to see the joy in it. When I didn't make it in 2016, what brought me back was that I knew I could do better. I knew that I still could do more with it, and I wanted to. I think that also my family has a lot to do with that. My support team around me. They always saw so much more in me than what I saw in myself. That's for sure.
How did they support you?
Okay, well, my parents supported me, to be super blunt, financially throughout my entire career, which I'm so blessed to have that. They were just always there. I knew that if I failed, my definition of what I thought failure was, they'd be there to hold my hand and tell me everything was fine. They created an environment for me to go for it, which I think is really special because that allows you the freedom to just try.
So what advice would you give to parents in supporting their kids, especially if they have big dreams?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I had a conversation with a mum the other day who came up to me and said to me, "Did your mum ever get scared of you getting injured?" And I said, "Oh, well, I don't know." I thought about it and I was like, look, actually, probably. Yeah, gymnastics is kind of a dangerous sport. I can imagine now that looking back, she probably was scared of me getting injured. She never, ever made me feel like that though. I had no idea if that was something that she was worried about. All I ever felt from my mum was support. One day I was standing at the end of the vault run, I must have been 9, my eyes out because I was scared of doing my vault. Vaults always scared me. My mum looked at me and she said, "Okay, Emma, I'm going to take you home and we don't ever have to come back here again." And I thought about it and I brushed off my tears and I looked at my mum and I said, "No, I'm going to do it." That never happened again, right? My parents created a safe space for me to thrive. And I would say that's probably my biggest advice is your child is going to learn so much about themselves and develop such a strong sense of self through any athletic career. Allow that to happen the way it's going to unfold. I know that when I missed out on Olympics, that was hard for my mum too, because my mum was through my career with me the whole entire way. We used to joke and call her our taxi because she was our taxi, she was our chef, she was everything. And same with my dad included. My dad would take us to morning training so that my mum could sleep in the morning. When I didn't meet the goals that I had set, I actually feel like my mum took it harder than me because she was not the one in control of the situation. I was.
I get how she feels because it's like she wants to make it right for you. She wants to call them up and go, "Let my daughter in, let Australia in."
Yeah. In 2020, when I didn't make Olympics because of the whole COVID situation, long story short, they cut short the qualification. It was well and truly out of my control what happened there. And for me, I've come to terms with, okay, sometimes things happen out of your control. If it's not in your control, no point worrying about it, okay? That's a lot of work I've done with Dave too. My mum's not done that same work. And my mum's like, "We are going to the court of sport." And I had to sit her down and just say, "Mum, I'm at peace. I am so grateful for the life that I have had throughout gymnastics and I'm going to be okay and I need you to be okay with it as well." But I think she took it harder than me.
What's something that parents should avoid when trying to encourage their kids?
I think that it depends on individuals, right? Everyone struggles and deals with different things. I would say get involved, but not to too much of an extent. My parents were really quite involved with my gymnastics. They made a point of getting to know my coaches and understanding the sport, right? Like my dad's come from a background of cricket and rugby, had no idea about gymnastics, but now knows everything. So there's that level of involvement in how to balance it. And I would say avoid just enforcing the normal parts of a childhood, right? Gymnastics is something where I think now you can create a little bit more balance in, but also you can benefit out of gymnastics as much as what you do out of regular education. Be open, I suppose, to a bit of both rather than inflexible. Be open-minded in what you can develop skills in as a child through both an athletic career and an education. I think maybe a lot of us grow up thinking, you have to go to school and then uni. You get so many life skills out of an athletic career to build on from there. If I was a mum and my kid was doing gymnastics, the thing that I would avoid doing is probably just overstepping and trying to control.
When you say control, like the sport or more?
Control my child and what they want to do, right? Like give them the options. Like I said, with my mum basically saying to me, hey, if you want to quit, let's quit. I watched other parents not give their child that option, or the child didn't feel like they had the option. They thought that if they quit, they were letting down their parents. And inevitably, that's what ended up happening to most of them.
Let's move to a bit of strength and training. How has strength training impacted your performance in gymnastics, particularly for challenging events like the balance beam?
When I was younger, growing up, we predominantly did strength training at gymnastics. I had 2 Chinese coaches, and so we did an intense gymnastics strength, but it was predominantly calisthenic strength. It's not until I got older that I started doing weights training. And within my comeback journey, I've been pretty vocal about the fact that I think that weights training is really important because the level of impact that goes through our bodies when we're taking off and landing is something like 15 times our body weight. That's really difficult to replicate in calisthenic training unless you're doing lots and lots of repetitions. There's a couple of things. The strength is important in terms of handling impact and being able to focus on quality rather than quantity of reps. So I found that I could do less of the skills that I do as an older athlete because I was stronger. And I didn't need to do as many of them to build strength. I already had the foundation of strength. Then when it comes to things like balance beam, within balance, I'm always going to say that you need your core. I distinctly remember just doing dish after dish after dish hold when I was younger, and it was all to strengthen. Dish, for example, is when you lie on the ground and you lift your arms and legs up and hold them both up. And that's all I did when I was younger. And it's that core strength that actually helps you stay balanced on the beam. So that's absolutely important. And what differentiates artistic gymnastics from rhythmic gymnastics, I would say, is we have more of a strength component than flexibility.
Knowing what you know now, would you have started strength training earlier?
Yes. Yeah. We did try to implement it now and then, but I don't think that we quite understood as athletes. As athletes, we didn't quite understand. And sometimes I feel like the coaches also don't have that same knowledge, and they have to have the trust to hand their kid over to someone else. When I made the comeback, I created my own team, so I was the one in control of that. When you're younger, your coach is the one that's in control. And they would probably need to have the education themselves to understand why strength training is important. I mean, look, I'm no expert. Off the top of my head, I probably would have started doing weights training when I was like 16.
So how do you incorporate strength training into your routine?
I do strength training for about an hour is my session, and I do it 2 to 3 times a week. And so that's in addition to my gymnastics training. I do less gymnastics training nowadays because I'm an old lady.
That must be a grandma.
So I do less gymnastics training. So I use the strength training as an add-on, in particular at the moment. While I'm not doing too much gymnastics training, I'm busy, I make sure to maintain my strength training because that for me is a foundation. So when I was younger, we used to do strength training before we start gymnastics. Like in morning training, all we would do is gymnastics, strength training all the time. I would use weight training to avoid overuse injuries so it can cancel out a session.
How do you structure one of your typical strength training sessions?
Well, I listen to my coach.
Coach, it seems to be a theme, how important coaches and teams are.
Yes, it is a theme for me, yeah. I mean, that's just my perspective at least. I go in there, warm up a little bit, and then generally what I'll do with weights training, I'll be in a separate weights gym. And so I've got a separate coach for that, and we'll work on slowly building up weight over time. And we don't do excessive amounts of reps. I'm not in there to do cardio or like get puffed. It's just simply to build the muscles the bigger muscles that I'm gonna need for gymnastics. Then when I would go to a gymnastics session, I would start with a warm-up, which incorporates a small amount of core strength in there, and maybe some handstands and stuff like that. And then I would spend about half an hour doing some calisthenic strength exercises to strengthen in particular my core and my shoulders.
And what about recovery? What do you do for recovery?
That's something I've taken far more seriously in my comeback than I ever have in the past. In the past, recovery consisted of hot and cold plunges, which I hated, icing, which I avoided like no tomorrow, and I did not even think about nutrition as recovery or sleep. Sleep was just sleep. Now, I really don't overtrain. Like I don't do any more gymnastics than what I need to do. I'm really focused on quality, not quantity. So I make sure that I have a rest day. So Sunday obviously is the day that I usually don't train, but I also sometimes have a rest day within the week anyway. That's something I never used to do because I'd be too scared to have recovery days. I find that both cognitively and physically, I pick up skills easier when I have adequate recovery. And so sleep's really, really important. I do preventative measures for injuries rather than I used to only go to the physio after I was injured or get a massage if I was sore. Now I have the privilege of getting a massage once a week or once a fortnight. I see my physio once a week or once a fortnight, and I see my chiropractor once a week. And then I've got another chiropractor who I see once a month.
This is quite a team you've got around you. So we've got the mental performance coach, the two chiros, the physio, the masseuse, the strength training coach, plus you've got that support network in your family.
Yeah, and then I forgot, which I shouldn't have because it's part of who I am, within my recovery is obviously my nutrition too. And so that's something I never ever thought about. My mum did for me when I was younger. I remember I'd finish morning training and she'd have food ready in the car. I'd finish nighttime training and she'd have our food ready in the car because the trip home was about half an hour to 40 minutes. I didn't do that when I didn't move out of home, but I all of a sudden had a boyfriend and I was not coming home all of the time. And it was up to me to look after my nutrition from probably the ages 18 to 24. And I didn't really consider nutrition as a part of recovery. Now I do. Now it's like, okay, you are having protein before and after training. You are getting adequate amounts of carbohydrates and fats for what you need. That has been absolute game changer. And so having my mentor Dean in that space, that's another person to add to my little list.
Because you're a certified health coach with Simpler Health. Tell us a bit about that.
I'll keep it brief. After I retired gymnastics, I gained weight and I lost my period for like 2 years. I got psoriasis when I think about it as well. And I just wasn't healthy. I actually went vegan for a year.
Do you recommend it?
It can work, but you've got to get educated. And I was not. I just went vegan because I feel sorry for the animals, which I still do. So I didn't do it the correct way. And I ended up eating a very high carbohydrate diet and very, very, very low protein. Given my background as a high-performance athlete, that's a recipe for disaster. Within the 2 years or the year and a half that I had retired up from gymnastics, I just went through a bunch of body changes. Coming from a very judgmental sport where that was a heavy focus, obviously, throughout my career, I freaked out. Cut a long story short, ended up getting some blood tests done. I went and saw a GP and naturopath who noticed that my insulin levels had risen. She sent me along to Dean Kilby, who's the founder of Simpler Health, and I underwent a metabolic reset program, which is just a clinically designed nutrition program. So I did the program and dropped the weight, got my period back. It was crazy mind-blowing because I just started to learn about the fundamentals of nutrition and how simple it is. It really simplified it all and made it known to me. So Dean said, I'd love for you to work with me, do your sports nutrition certification and coach on this protocol. And so that's what I do now.
So you mentioned earlier about the amount of protein that you need, the carbohydrates, the fats. Is that something that you do with people, that you sit down?
Yeah, more or less. There's two elements to what I do. So with Simpler Health, we've got the Simpler Health protocol, which is a clinically designed program. There's 4 phases to it, and it is to give basically a metabolic reset and a hormonal rebalance.
Can you just elaborate on what's a metabolic health reset?
Yeah, of course. So essentially, metabolic health has so many different strains. To put it plainly, I would put it down to anyone that's struggling with weight gain, typically obesity, type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes, and high levels of insulin resistance, okay? This can show up in any sorts of ways. Like I said, hormonal imbalances, PCOS, for women, endometriosis, osteoarthritis, they're all metabolic conditions. So this protocol is designed to target all of these things through nutrition only. And so I coach people through an already designed program. And then once they get through the first 3 phases, they get to phase 4. And in phase 4, that's where we start to work on an individual level of, okay, well, what's going to benefit you for the rest of your life? I really try to look at it from a holistic point of view, and I don't want to cause people dramas where they're having to think too much about how much do I need all the time. We do it more intuitively based. Protein is the most important part, and then the carbohydrate fat ratio, we work around it. I've recently gone a little bit more into the gymnastics realm of things, because when I went back to gymnastics, I realized we don't have a lot of that understanding, and we do such a unique sport. You know, we're not endurance runners and we're not fast bodybuilders. We get up there, we're training for about 3.5 hours in a session. We get up and use a burst of energy for 1.5 minutes, and then we get down and we sit down, or we stand around, and then we've got to get up. It's a very different way of eating. And so I help people figure out what they need for themselves in terms of nutrition, yes.
What does a day in Emma look like for food?
Every day is relatively similar, I'm not going to lie, unless I'm going out for dinner or something. I believe wholeheartedly in balance. That's a part of everything that I do. Breakfast is almost always eggs. They are my absolute go-to. They are little protein pockets, and it's so easy and convenient. It takes me 2 seconds. So I usually do 2 eggs and up to 4 egg whites. Reason why is I usually train in the morning, and so I don't want to have a large amount of fats in the morning. I want the protein to be easily digestible, and obviously 1 egg is only 7 grams of protein. It's next to nothing. I need a pretty substantial amount because I'm doing weights training 3 times a week, and then gymnastics around that as well. So that's my brekkie. 2 eggs, 4 egg whites. Sometimes if I'm feeling fancy, I'll put some onion and like spinach or something in there, right? But most of the time, can't be bothered. That's it, really. Sometimes I have fruit. Actually, most of the time, if I'm about to go to strength training, I'll usually have some fruit, whether that's berries or an apple, or we have tons of grapefruits at the moment because my boyfriend's Italian dad gives us so many grapefruit. So that's a morning ritual for me now. And then I'll go to strength training. Once I finish strength training, I usually have a protein shake, which is just protein powder and water, to be honest. I don't really need much more than that. And then lunchtime, whenever I feel like it, I'm usually on calls and things like that, basically just meat and veggies, maybe some rice. Just depends on what I feel like. If I'm overly hungry, then I'll sometimes make a little bit extra, but I always have frozen veggies in the freezer, and I always have some form of meat. At the moment, my favorite is chicken thighs because they're so convenient. I just marinate them, put them in the air fryer, and I've got protein. So that's usually my lunch, a combination of protein, meat, like meat, veg, and some form of carbohydrates. I'll usually go to training in the afternoon. If I do go to training in the afternoon, I might have some fruit or something before I go, or a protein bar. If I'm not training in the afternoon, I usually just work straight through until dinner. And then dinner's essentially the exact same thing as lunch. It's pretty uncreative because I don't like cooking. It works. And I think my biggest focus is, as long as I have meat and veg, I can work around that. I always say to my clients as well, I don't have restrictions on what I do when I go out. However, I'm responsible for my health. And so when I go out for dinner, back in the day when I had, ignorance is bliss, when I had no idea what I was doing, I would choose the yummy option. Now I choose the yummy option that's going to give me what my body requires. I run a high performance machine, essentially, and I ask my body to do a lot for me. The least I can do is enjoy a yummy meal that's also going to give me some protein and give me what my body needs. For example, if I go out for dinner and we go to the pub, I'll generally get the steak and chips and salad, right? So then you get a little bit of the yummy stuff, but I'm also giving my body what it needs to.
And I love the simplicity. I know every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday what I'm going to have for dinner, what I'm making. And then when I start getting sick of it, then I just change that one day.
So convenient. Yeah, the key for me, and I tell my clients as well, is just keep some staples in the fridge. Like, it doesn't need to be creative all the time. I guess that's me. I'm not one of those people that constantly looks for, I've got friends that say, oh my God, I can never eat that. I need more variety all the time. But if you've got staples in the fridge and you can create a foundation of a healthy meal, then you can build on that.
Mince is my go-to.
Me too, love.
Yeah, because you got Mexican, bolognese, burgers.
I'm the exact same. Mince is the best. Yeah, I make this mince dish and my boyfriend loves it, but it is literally never the same. Never. Like, it's a combination of mince, like beef broth as well, veggies, because usually we always have veggies, and sometimes I'll put in rice. And that's like it. And I'll just mess with how many or what type of veggies, or is it rice or not? And it's never the same, but it's always yum.
Yeah, love it. So what's the most valuable lesson you've learned from your career that you think everyone should apply to their fitness journey?
Oh goodness. Okay, there's so many things that I've learned throughout my career. Okay, well, I would basically say that goals are really, really important. I used to struggle with setting a goal that I really, really wanted because I was afraid of it. Truth is, I think all of us sort of know what we want. We then make a judgment of whether or not we think that's realistic for us. I would say set a crazy big goal that you think is a little bit insane, like going to the Olympics 9 months out of a 3.5-year retirement. If it doesn't work out, that's fine, but it's going to set for you your path. It's going to give you a way to working towards. And it's within that journey, as cliche as it sounds, that you get to develop who you are, and that's the beauty of setting a goal. It's not necessarily reaching it, it's how you get there and the person that you become along the way. Set something crazy and absolutely go for it, and then sort of embrace setbacks. Look, you just got to get to the point where you start embracing those moments because of who you become out of them. And I think that's really important. I wouldn't be the person sitting here today even being able to offer this advice unless I had gone through what I've been through as an athlete. Just embracing those setbacks and creating opportunities from them, because I think like you said earlier, I also agree. I'm not sure that failure really exists. It's what we deem as failure. Same as success, right? Everyone deems success completely differently. But when something doesn't go your way, you've got two options. You either dwell on it and let it ruin the rest of your life, or you create an opportunity from it, and I'm an opportunities person.
And it's true, our setbacks, our failures, our challenges, our difficulties is what gives us the knowledge and the strength to be able to help people going through that. Whereas without them, we wouldn't have that experience to be able to help others and move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I absolutely, definitely want to do. Whether it's through my Simpler Health, a lot of the passion I have behind it is from my experience through Simpler Health. The reason why I want to help young gymnasts and gymnasts coming up and create an alumni program is because that's been my experience through it. So experience drives great passion.
You're doing so much now. You've got the certified health coach with Simpler Health. You're still training in gymnastics. You've got the sports performance brand, RTM, that you're the co-founder of, which Chloe absolutely loves, the kit bag and drink bottle. It is the greatest. And then you've got your podcast and speaking places. Tell us about what your future goals and aspirations are, and make them big on the podcast. Declare them here.
I know, I was going to say, oh God, you better put your words into practice, Emma. Yeah, no, look, at the moment it's integrating them all a little bit. I think everything is well and truly within that health and fitness space and helping others. I love doing that. The most rewarding part about Simpler Health is watching people and supporting them in transforming their lives, right? Same thing in gymnastics. I came out of gymnastics really hating wanting to go near it, and now I have this newfound appreciation for it helping me create the person that I am today, which I'm really proud of. So I want to share my experiences to help others, whether that's in the nutrition realm or in the gymnastics realm. A big focus for me is I want to try and get sponsorship in Gymnastics Australia. We don't have a lot of funding in the sport. In order to create longevity in our sport, I've been really fortunate that I have my parents to financially support me, but to continue doing gymnastics next year, I'd like to go to World Cup, and it's going to cost me 10 grand to go to one of them. Swimming and any high performing sport like that has sponsorship. Gymnastics is a hard one to sponsor, and I want to try and get us there. So that's what I'm trying to do at the moment, and share my experiences, get it out there and be that person that hopefully inspires and empowers people around me.
We definitely inspire Chloe, my 10-year-old, and a lot of her friends as well. Why do you think there isn't that sponsorship in gymnastics?
To put it plainly, companies will sponsor not necessarily just out of the kindness of their heart. There needs to be something that they get back. When we go to nationals, we don't get a high level of people coming to view it for whatever reason. Before social media, gymnastics was very, very word of mouth. Now with social media, we have the platform to be able to expand that. On a deeper level, I have thought about this a lot. Gymnastics is not necessarily that easy to relate to. It's got a wow factor, and a lot of people do it when they're a kid, but also a lot of people don't make it. And so they don't view it the same way that you view, say, soccer or tennis or rugby or even swimming, where everyone does that. Yeah. There's longevity in that. You can recreationally have a hobby of playing soccer with your local soccer team or play tennis on the weekends with your friends. So you have an appreciation for the people that are really, really good at that sport because you do that and you know that you're not that good, right? Yeah. In gymnastics, it's a lot more out of reach, I think, to the common person watching. And also it's so difficult to understand. Even sometimes I watch a competition and I don't understand the scoring. There's that complexity to the sport itself. It is a really difficult sport. It asks for a high level of demand from family, like I've just sort of outlined, and from you as a young child, because the reality is you have to start when you're young. It's difficult to have longevity as well. You can have kids with little AFL cards of players and the players will stick around for a while. You can follow that player through your own child's lifetime. Whereas in gymnastics, back in the day, you'd go to one Olympic cycle, which is 4 years, and then you'd never hear of that gymnast ever again. It's having the longevity, it's having the eyes on the sport too, and creating the relatability of it.
I think too, gymnastics is something that every child should do, male or female, and start off with, because it just builds their balance, their foundation, their core, and then finding a way, okay, there is that path of elite, but what can we do for it to be important? Because adults can do it. I know our local gymnastics has an adults program too, because it's another form of fun strength training.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what's changing. That's a shift, right? Yeah. Back in the day, it was like gymnastics was this pretty, think about it, it's very perfect. I was never allowed to post a fail. I was never allowed to post me falling off an apparatus. Yeah. And it was very perfect. Put your hair up, makeup, you have to look brilliant in a leotard. And so that's difficult to relate to. People don't relate to that. Whereas now I think we're bringing people to it more, and the reality is you're absolutely right. So many people have at least done or tried gymnastics before. They just haven't stuck with it. So maybe if we create that narrative of you start in gymnastics and then it gives you the skills for everything else you do, maybe we'll have more people around.
So where can people find you, follow your journey?
You can follow along on my Instagram or my TikTok or even Facebook. It's just EJ Nedov. Basically just my name, and it's just EJ Nedov across all of my platforms. However, actually one of my best friends, she did make up a website for me when I was at Olympics as a bit of a present. She's an absolute gun in branding and marketing, and she makes the most beautiful websites. So she made me a website, it's just emmanedov.com. And then for Artium, basically there's just a website. It's just all online that you purchase things at www.artiumsport.com. Or you can also message either Georgia Rose Brown or myself. She's my business partner.
I'll put that all into the show notes. Before we go, I've got 2 final questions. First one, what is one habit that someone can start today to make an impact on their training or vitality? So a positive impact.
Add more protein into your breakfast.
And I'm going to elaborate on that. Book in to see you at Simpler Health as a coach. Do a session with you so that you can help find them the amount of protein that they need.
Yes, absolutely fantastic. That was good. That was unplanned. So that was good.
And lucky last question, what does dominate mean to you?
Dominate. Oh, immediately what comes to mind is leading. I think dominate sounds quite powerful in it could be a dominating king back in the day or something. Might because I've just been watching a show called The Empress and it's about kings and queens. I would say leading powerfully and being a master. Just being a leader in what you do. Yeah, really dominating that field.
Thank you so much for joining us today. This is probably one of my favourite episodes. You're absolutely incredible and inspiring.
Thank you.
So good. It's exceeded my expectations. And you blow me away with your wisdom, your maturity, the way you approach sport and life and your mindset. It's completely inspiring.
Thank you. I've done a lot of work around it.
You've got the coaches, and I think that's one thing that people don't realise, how much a team really matters and having the coaches. I've got a mindset coach. don't call them mindset coach, but they help with the mindset, the food, the trainer in the gym.
Oh yeah, it makes a huge difference. I think no successful person is ever successful on their own. And one thing that was really highlighted to me is you only know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. And you need someone to tell you the things that you don't know, because otherwise how on earth are you going to find them out?
Yeah, thanks again. And thank you to all our listeners for tuning in. I'm not even going to ask if you got value. You did. Share the episode with someone you know that could benefit from Emma's wisdom. And don't forget to subscribe and like the show. Your support allows us to keep bringing such amazing guests like Emma to the show. Until next time, go out there and dominate your life.